And thanks, Alex. And so we're going to have a conversation. I will throw this out to questions after, so start to formulate them as we go along. Let's first talk about what you're currently doing. So you're, again, independent and so forth. I want to talk about that. And then you're an author, my friend. So why don't you talk about, again, where you are?
That's right, Rob. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me out at the event. I've actually been coming to your events for more than 10 years. I started out when I was selling ad tech, showing up to Ad Monsters events. And it's just so cool to be here. I've seen some colleagues, got Patrick and Chris, people I used to work with, and it feels like coming home. So thank you for having me.
You got it.
And great to see all of you and meet many of you today. So my story actually, I would say it really starts with this book. So I wrote this book, it came out in April 2020. Worst time to release a book in 118 years. Literally released at the first peak death wave of COVID. So book party in New York, book party in San Francisco, op-ed with the Times, the Journal, everything canceled. And that led me to say, okay, I never want to be reliant on another person's platform ever again. Not a tech platform, not a publisher's platform. And I was a reporter at BuzzFeed at that time covering the tech giants and said, I'm leaving. So book comes out April 2020. End of May, I give my notice once I realized what was going on. I mean, I was covering, due to my editor, and not to shit on editors, but let's go, every tech conference that was going to be canceled due to COVID. And I was like, guys, they're all canceled. They're like, please update the list. I said, okay. Enjoy your website. And so I went and started my own company. It's called Big Technology. It's a newsletter. You can find that at bigtechnology.com, and a podcast where twice a week I have conversations about what's going on in the tech world. Once a week, like a flagship interview between myself and somebody either influencing the direction of the technology industry or somebody criticizing it, and then just a news recap with an analyst on Friday. And so I've been doing that for almost 5 years at this point. It's a sustainable, profitable, independent, single-person media business.
Yeah, well, and again, I said in one of the sessions, if you want to think about what the future of publishing might look like, it's going to come from small publishers like yourself that can, again, handle those things. I do want to go back to the book, though, because I think the book has some really, really interesting things for this audience. Can you talk about day one and what it means?
Yes, so the phrase always day one is a Jeff Bezos phrase, but the book really began, and I'll explain what Bezos means by that, but the book really began with a conversation that I had with Mark Zuckerberg. So as a reporter in Silicon Valley, I was just used to doing many interviews with tech CEOs. Here's how it goes. If you've been in them, you know how it works. You get called into a CEO's office. They talk to you for 25 minutes about the product that they're going to release. PR person is gauging your expressions. Okay, do they look interested? Do they look skeptical? If you look interested, they say, any questions for the CEO? You ask one, they answer for 5 minutes, and you're gone. Or otherwise, they say, thanks for coming. And embargo time is 10 a.m. tomorrow. With Zuckerberg, he was working on basically his philosophy for Facebook, and he sends me a document, long document, that he was planning to publish. We show up, myself and my editor show up to his office in Menlo Park, and he says, I want your feedback. What do you think? Completely flips that interaction. And I thought this was like a little weird. So I started asking some friends and sources that worked at Facebook what's going on. And what they told me was Zuckerberg is always asking for feedback, always. Eliciting ideas, hiring teenage product managers to be able to tell them what's going on with young people and then Snapchatting with them. Just one story about that. So I actually, I brought this up because I spoke with the product manager and brought this up to Zuckerberg, and I was like, Mark, just admit it that you Snapchat. And he goes, look, I use everything. When we were baiting, does everyone remember that Facebook built a dating app? Okay, they did. Didn't really, I think it's still alive, but didn't really go anywhere. But he had to test the dating apps before he built it. And I was like, you used your own picture? He goes, yeah. And he said, I was on this app that was serving me one person a day, and I thought it was pretty cool, so I show Priscilla, his wife, and she looks at the app and she goes, I'm having lunch with that person tomorrow. So that lunch was probably pretty awkward, but I think it just is a testament for the fact that Zuckerberg at the top of Facebook is always trying to ask people what's going on, and there's something to be said for a CEO that will dictate the vision, but I think you can see it with every single one of the tech giant CEOs. They put a premium on making sure that ideas from the bottom filter up to the top. And they do that because they realize that we're living in a moment where companies have never been built faster and cheaper, which means that if you used to sit on an idea for a lifetime 100 years ago, which was, by the way, it was the case, 67 years on the S&P 500 100 years ago. Now the average is 15 years. So now instead of one idea, you need 3.5 ideas to stay relevant for the same amount of time.
Shit, I got homework.
Exactly. Yeah, we all have homework. So you have to definitely be transforming yourself. And that's what always day one means. I always thought within Amazon, it was always day one, come in, work weekends, work holidays, cry at your desk, it's day one. Don't give me that day two bullshit, which it is. But more than you have to work this hard, it is, I don't care about our legacy business. I need you to act as if it's your first day. The best thing about a startup on a first day, no legacy business to support. You build just what the market needs in that moment, and you don't care about what's gotten you there. And that is why Amazon has gone from a first-party, from a bookseller really, to a first-party marketplace, third-party marketplace, cloud hosting service. The hardware business with the Kindle and voice computing with Alexa, and movie studio with Prime Video. I'm probably missing a couple, but these companies reinvent over and over and over again, and that's really the theme of the book. It's not only just the strategy of how they reinvent, but how they do it. And a lot of that has to do with artificial intelligence, which again, my timing sucked because it came out in April 2020. We're 2 years and change ahead of ChatGPT. But the theory was if you look within the tech giants, you're going to see what's coming for the rest of the economy in a couple of years. And I mean, that turned out to be correct.
Well, that's got to obviously be and soak up a lot of your time now, because really is what we're seeing going on now with big tech really about AI market share? Or, I mean, again, I look at it and go like, in terms of their businesses and so forth, and evolving it, that it is going to be, there's probably only a few winners when it comes to AI in some respect. And again, you could tell me I'm off with it. There's gonna be a lot of different solutions out there. But when you sit there and you flip to your phone, your thumb is gonna go to one of a couple different places. Is that really the new battleground? Is that what it's all about?
Without a doubt. I mean, there's going to be $300 billion just this year spent in CapEx from big tech. Now, not all that is AI, but think about it, $300 billion. We just went through the year of efficiency, right? Now we're spending hundreds of billions. There's only one reason to do that is because you believe that if you get this right, the rewards are basically infinite. And that actually goes to, within VC circles, this is the way they evaluate. Today, Anthropic, by the way, raised $3.5 billion. No one cared, right? It's just like we're seeing the biggest rounds of venture capital in our lifetime, and everyone's like, okay, that's just AI right now. The thesis behind every one of these companies and the investors' bet is this AI technology is either going to go to infinity, in which case, who cares how much money we're spending, or zero. And if you take the average of infinity and zero, you get a pretty high return. So that's why we're seeing all this money being spent. And now, you asked who's going to get the payoff. I don't think it's just going to be one app. I think on the consumer and the business side, there's going to be many different applications that you can use. We're already seeing it actually happen right now, where like you speak with ChatGPT, you get one type of personality that might suit you. You speak with Claude, you get a different set of personality and different capabilities that might suit you. You speak with Grok, you should go to therapy. And there are all these different applications. So you have the consumer side, you have the user side, and then of course, there's the API, right? And so the other side of this bet is that this technology will be so valuable that companies will want to deploy it. And we still don't really know if there's a moat around the model, which is why like people sort of scratching their head around the NVIDIA and the OpenAI valuation when DeepSeek came out. But we do know that it costs a lot to run it. And so that's going to really create a lot of value for the Googles, Amazons, Microsofts, and probably still NVIDIA's out there. And that's what this battle is. It's definitely the most interesting, fiercest battle that I've watched in more than a decade of doing this. And I don't really see it quieting down anytime soon.
Interesting. And so as that approach and that money is that big, are you seeing that, well, let's relate this to publishing, right? All the LLMs are built off this idea of like grab everything from the internet, pop it in, build off of that and so forth. And now you're creating experiences with these tools that, again, I use them for a lot of things I do. I don't, again, the search bar doesn't work quite so well for me for some of the things I come up with. I'm just able to phrase it better, either in ChatGPT or, I'm in a place probably where most of the people in the room are, where you're like, oh, let me try this, let me try that, or whatever. At some point that settles out a little bit, and you pick your favorites or whatever, and things like that. But like, that impact that is having on publishing, does that come up in any of your conversations that are there? Are they thinking about publishers?
So, not really. In fact,
let me remind you,
yeah.
drinks start after this.
Well, listen, I think that it's not hopeless for publishers, but no, they don't think about the content that they're ingesting. In fact, they believe that they have a right to it because they are transforming it, like the model's called the transformer. In fact, on the way over here, because I'm a fun guy, I spent 3.5 hours watching a great video from Andre Karpathy, one of the early OpenAI employees, explaining generative AI from his point of view, start to finish. I really recommend it. It's very long and somewhat dry, but it's an incredible video. And he shows you exactly how they build an LLM. And he goes, all right, I'm just going to download the internet, 44 terabytes. That's it. That's the internet. And that's everything that we've produced, right? But that's how casual it is. And so I do think that we have spent, like the people in this room, we have spent, a lot of myself included, you included, we've spent a tremendous amount of energy based off of an equation that we create something of value to readers and viewers. They come and check it out, and then we are cut in on the value exchange. It does seem to me that a lot of the archival content, that equation is gone. Like, I don't think that's coming back. But there are still areas where publishers can play, where I'm playing, where I know you're playing, where many in the room are playing, that it's possible to thrive in this AI world. But again, I don't think there's much sympathy from the tech companies about the state of publishers, because all that stuff we've created over time, they've got it now. And like, it doesn't really matter if we support it or not. It's theirs. And I would say one last thing. The user wants it. Why are so many people going to ChatGPT and saying, give me a recipe, as opposed to going to allrecipes.com, or wherever the recipe site is, and apologies if they're in the room. The experience is better. And I do think that that is something that publishers are going to have to grapple with, which is, how has it gotten to the point that the tech can give you a recipe that hallucinates, but people would still rather cook that than go to your webpage?
So, all right, you said that there is a place for publishers in this world as this is transforming. So where do you see the opportunities?
So I think I'm a little biased in this. I'll admit this already, because this is what I'm doing. But to me, you cannot replace urgency, a sense of urgency with AI. You cannot replace what's going on in the moment with AI. So to me, I think one of the categories that's going to be more valuable than ever is news. If you have news, you're, by definition, publishing something that the AI hasn't ingested already, and that most of your competitors haven't ingested already. And I think that, like, the era of how-to content, I don't know if we have eHow in the room. We do. I owe you a drink later. But there's going to have to be a shift from that, because people are going to say how. Just like they've been saying how to YouTube, they're going to now say how to ChatGPT. But they can't say what happened today to ChatGPT, because it doesn't know.
Yeah.
So I think that news and urgency in content is going to get people going directly to sites, because we know the social web is a mess. You can't get news from X anymore. It's deprioritized. You can't get news from ChatGPT. I mean, it can search the web, but there is a direct value. You can block it. So there's a direct value exchange that's going to happen there. So I think anything with news, sense of urgency is important. And the second thing is personality. And I think over the past 20 years, maybe longer, we've seen the web be commoditized in a way that it all kind of looks the same on Facebook and on Google. And I would say now more than ever, if it's being spit out in ChatGPT, everything will look the same. So if your website or your publishing company can publish with some personality, we were in the group before talking about a life after search and social. And what did you say? I'm thinking about putting my writers' faces on the web, on the top of the page, because that's something that our readers will relate to. You can type, it's been this way for a long time, it's just now this way on steroids. You can type in, what's the sports score on Google, you can get the score. But you're not going to get Bill Simmons' take on that. For that, you need to go to the Ringer.
Right.
And I think we're all, and maybe this is cliche, and maybe this is something that's been spoken about forever, but at the risk of beating a dead horse, we're all going to move to that model, where anything that's published needs to be published with personality, with humanity, and with a touch that the AI can't replicate.
So one thing I'll hit on that in terms of whether I need Bill Simmons or not. I will have the tools by which to say, give me Bill Simmons and Stephen Smith and let them duke it out. And AI will be able to create those, those. So I think there's some things there where there's going to be a little bit of a push on that. Like, I think where the line's going to be is going to be really interesting. I look at it and go, like, I think that there's this aspect of going, like, I will as a person go, I can create my own reality. And therefore, I then cannot relate to anyone else. So in other words, to sit there and say, I can create my Bill Simmons, bot, and you're listening to Bill Simmons, and I'm like trying to talk to you about, like, can you believe what Bill said? And you're like, what? And I'm like, he said X. And you're like, no, he didn't. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's this aspect of going, like, if human connection has value in the future, there's this aspect of going, like, well, then you know what? We both need to hear humans say things and react to things that humans do. And then it becomes AI is like this, there's the difference between, like, utility, what was the score, and journey. What do I want to hear from that so that then I can relate to it in some way, either a person on me or that I want to talk to you about, right? I think that that's going to be the line, which I think kind of comes down to personality.
Yeah,
right?
and I'm not saying we're not going to be challenged.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
I sort of wrote a post that was maybe a little too confident for the Boston Globe a couple years ago that said, wait, ChatGPT didn't take my job? And I'm working on the follow-up now, which is I think I might start to be automated because in just a year and a half, we've seen publishing tools that are artificial and exceptional. I'm sure people here have tried Notebook LM.
Yep.
You've used the podcast function.
Yep.
Have you used it on a weekly basis? No. But it just goes to show you that AI is getting close, right? Like, those two AI hosts are freaky and somewhat human-like, and you can actually listen to them. And they're...
Didn't you say that you talked about the ride, you were listening to the podcast, but didn't you say you had a meeting with somebody? Go ahead, tell that story.
Yeah, so these things are incredibly useful for, and this is, by the way, there's a great story in the Times this weekend about AI being used for vibes coding, which is basically like you have a project and you just want to build it so you can use artificial intelligence for it. And I think that that's what these AI content creation tools are great for, just being able to experience their power in the long tail for something that a media company would never be set up for because there's not enough demand for it. And I'll just give you the example that I was talking about when we were talking earlier. I was driving down to Meta for an interview with their chief technology officer, Andrew Bosworth. And I prepped a lot, but not enough, because I don't think you could ever prep enough. And so I took the remaining 5 stories that I wanted to read and said, I have a 30, 40-minute drive, depending on traffic, and I'm going to listen to them from an AI podcast that's made just about these stories. So I just input them into Notebook LM, downloaded it, and hit play in the car. Now, nobody would ever make a podcast about hey, let's talk about the last 5 things about Andrew Bosworth.
Hey, I hope Alex driving safe. Yeah, he's a good driver, but yeah, right. I can hear the whole.
So that's how you know AI is hallucinating. But it can create these things, and those are wonderful experiences. Now, can that replicate a Bill Simmons who has insider knowledge, who talks to the GMs, who talks to the players, who is opinionated and unique? I don't think that's coming too soon. But can the long tail content, that bespoke, custom content that people are creating? I listened to that show about Bosworth. I did not listen to Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway on the way down. So that is a challenge. But I don't think it's going to be the #1 show is AI 1 and 2 talking to me about Meta's recent Oculus moves.
Fair, fair. But in this conquest of, or again, just like looking for the AI market share and all the investment that's going into it, what is going to be the return? Is it going to be that we all pay for AI, or ads? Where does advertising actually? So I should probably sit that there's multiple questions in this one question, right? But one of them is the advertising aspect in and around AI. What are your thoughts about how that's going to play out, or the business model?
Yeah.
I gave you multiple things to work with.
Well, there's going to have to be advertising. There already is introduction of advertising. It's a little bit clunky because you develop this relationship with these bots. I mean, have you tried GPT 4.5, the bot that came out from OpenAI?
Yeah, right.
It's really personable.
Yeah.
And they were talking about like, hey, this model has more ability. And the ability is less about being able to solve math tests and more like it actually understands the context and it understands, what you're doing. And there's some amazing, there are some hilarious tests that people have put it through that I'm not going to say on stage because I want to be able to come back to these conferences. But if you come to me later, I'll show you the screenshot. It's really hilarious. But anyway, let's get back to the question. The engineers, they're weird. But I think that these things are personable, so they don't want to like be interruptive and say, hey, by the way, since you're interested in Paris, how about this flight from Air France? I think, actually, now that we talk about it, maybe that can work if the ads are relevant. And these ad tech companies, these AI companies, are going to be world class at making things relevant. Then there's a chance they'll be able to do advertising well. But they have to be very careful because again,
Right,
you're forming
that's
a relationship.
That's me,
with
the
these
utility
things.
thing, right?
Exactly. You're forming not just a utility, a friend. If you
Right.
speak to anybody in Silicon Valley, they want to make these things your friend. So your friend has to be very careful when it's suggesting products that it's getting paid to promote.
Right. Right.
If it does it right, it can be amazing. But I think there's a reason why OpenAI started out subscription and freemium as opposed to going directly to, we know your intent, here's an ad, like Google has done.
Yeah. I think about like having some kind of agent that goes out and, again, I'm like, tell me what's going on in the world that I need to know, that, and only the stuff I want to know about or whatever. And it, and somehow in that whole process, there's this point of going like, oh, and just remember, you need to buy X brand, whatever, and just being like, AI, are you telling me that because I want that, or because like there's going to be this point of going like, are you giving me good advice that I've asked for, or because the platform in which I'm going through? And again, I think that creates opportunity for, again, there being this human interaction piece of going like, Alex, tell me what you listen to, tell me what you buy, like whatever that is, where'd you get that suit? That type of thing is much, much more interesting than it's going to be coming through and me not believing it. I don't know. We're going to find where that line is, right?
Well, Amazon last week introduced this new Alexa that's supposed to be rolling out next month, and what they showed is insane. It is anyone watch the presentation? Okay, definitely. There were some people that did. All right, just for those who didn't, contextually aware conversational Alexa that is going to understand what you buy, what you watch, what you listen to, where you are. But it's one story about Amazon. The data they have is absolutely crazy. I see you shaking your head, I was speaking with somebody who had been at Amazon for my book, and he goes, Amazon knows everything about you. The people in the same zip codes, they do the same stuff, they wear the same things, they are engaged in similar activities. Each zip code, you get a sense of the personality by the amount of data they have. So with that sort of knowledge, this guy's basically like, they know so much about you, I've stopped believing in free will, okay? So you put that knowledge in a contextually aware assistant that you can speak with and you have a running conversation with, and you say, hey, Alexa, new Alexa, whatever you are, instead of setting timers, it's like, do I have any gifts to buy? It's got your Google Calendar integrated, and it says, yeah, actually, you have these people who, and they might like this, and you got them this last year. So think about like that experience just for shopping, and the key barrier to them is going to be trust, because it can get to the point where you say, is every interaction going to be about them making me buy something or not? And so I think this is the place, these are the places where it's going to be exceptionally hard for these tech companies to build something of value, and that works. And that is the place where the open web, the independent internet, whatever you want to call it, has an opportunity to sort of take advantage of their shortcomings.
I have this belief that Alexa doesn't capture everything because, again, imagine my family and having 3 kids that are variations on me, that we have not been offered a script for at least some kind of television series is like, it feels, if they are listening to that level, I'm insulted because we put on a really good show at dinner almost every night.
Alexa
New
Plus
material.
rolls out next month.
Yeah,
So
right.
it might be coming.
Right. Well, again, maybe we've been rehearsing and getting ready for stuff like that. I mean, it's amazing to hear you talk, and again, the stakes that are involved between all this big tech, between the players and their battle. And the analogy I've always used is Godzilla versus Mothra, and we're just people down at ground level, and buildings are falling all over us around it. It is really hard to kind of predict kind of where to go and what's safe, where, like, again, a lot of conversations about people losing their jobs in lots of different fields, right? And really no one putting out a plan of like, okay, so those people don't have to do that anymore, so guess what? They get to do X. No one's putting that piece to it. It's just this particular part of it. And it's almost like this aspect, like when you're talking and I'm listening to what you're saying, there's a part of like, just like fear, right? Like I'm sitting there thinking not only just about publishing Beeler.Tech, what I do, but to kind of all of these particular pieces. And I'm just kind of curious, like, one, do you ask those questions of these powerful people in terms of like, are you thinking about the cost to wherever it is? Or are they seeing this like, don't you understand this frees humanity up to paint more paintings and we'll get to do all these things or whatever? I don't, like, do they have these conversations?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll say that I speak with tech company CEOs and companies who are using this technology all the time. And I'm always asking, so are you going to reduce full-time employees with this tech? One of them has said yes, Klarna. Sort of like another smile. Has anyone seen the New York Times story about why Klarna is marketing itself so much as reducing labor? Okay, definitely go read that. Like, part of that is marketing. Part of that is they've actually been able to automate their customer service. But I will say that at the stage we're in, we have not seen the sweeping job loss that you might expect. And I think that, like, if you think about a company, it's not that a company is ever satisfied with what it's doing to that point. They're never saying, okay, we've built exactly what we need to build, and we're done. And so if we can get AI to replace what our team is doing, we can fire everybody. No, the other thing, the things that most companies are doing, especially most successful companies are doing, is they say internally, we could do so much more. There's so much more that we want to do. We can't do it because we're resource constrained. We can't do it because we're time constrained. And AI, at least in the early moments of this, can help these companies start to really pursue their roadmaps and accelerate their roadmaps. And I talked earlier about how the S&P 500, you now last 15 years instead of 67 years, and a lot of that is technology enabled. And we're about to accelerate that even further. So business cycles are going to move much faster than they ever did. But that doesn't mean that we're going to put everybody out of work. Some companies will hire less. I think what will happen is they're going to realize that they are falling behind their competitors who kept the same staffing levels and are starting to ship more. So I think everybody's going to do it. It's a cliche in business now that every company is a tech company, but it's true to a certain extent. If every company is a tech company, and you have literally a gift from God, this unbelievable, magical technology that can talk and computes as it writes, and you can't find a way to put that into use to grow and to get things accomplished that you didn't think were possible with the team that you had, you're just not seeing the full picture.
So, and I think that is such a great point to hit on, as I'm sitting here thinking through the roller coaster I've been going through as you've been talking about that, is, again, what can we accomplish with these tools? Just take that off of our plates to do more. And I think the other piece to that that you hit on is I feel as publishers that have like legacy approaches to things are just going to realize you just have to be more nimble. To your point about like the business cycles changing, this is your opportunity to actually change and survive and be that brand. Again, if you serve your community, your audience, you can do so, but you have to get to the point of the speed unlike anything that you've done before, right?
Definitely.
I think that that's the speed thing, right?
And let me say one more thing. I'm still thinking about this because I just saw this recently and I'm trying to wrap my head around it. But I do think that content and software are going to start to merge. And what I mean by that is every piece of content is an opportunity for software. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to go speak with a group of community banks in the Midwest. And I don't use large language models for financial projections or anything like that. So on the way over here, again, I had a very productive plane ride. And I said, fuck it, let me just upload a bank statement and see what happens. And I uploaded a sample bank statement, but I also have uploaded my own credit card information back 6 months. Anthropic, please do not do anything with that. And I'm having a discussion. Build me a financial plan. And by the way, coolest thing you can do when you're using these models is add use code to the end of your prompt, and then it will be able to do things, orders of magnitude deeper than it can when it's just trying to spit out answers. So it said, build me a financial plan, use code. All right, financial plan comes out, and it's telling me, like, based on this fake bank statement, how much I need to save, and it's giving me bar charts of like why my balance went negative and pointing that out. And I said, all right, build me a retirement calculator. It builds I search for this all the time, the best retirement calculator I've ever seen, with fields that are based off of my entries in the conversation above. And this calculator, I'm sorry to say, it works. Okay, it is amazing. And to me, that just signaled that there's an opportunity for anyone doing content to realize that you have the opportunity to extend that to software of some kind. And of course, your readers or your audience will have to fact check when you actually present those solutions to them. But let's say, I'm just going to throw this out there. Let's say you're like a sports publication and you have an article about projected win totals or like who's going to bet the over-under. Like how amazing would it be to give your audience the opportunity to prompt and get a calculator in there where they could mess with the variables. They could say, all right, Kevin Durant isn't playing for the next 5 games. How does that change the win total? That is incredible power. And I think we're legitimately just starting to see how that's going to be unleashed. And I think it's very exciting for publishers.
Exciting, cool. I'd love to open up to other questions. I'm sure I did not ask all that we could get from this gentleman. Yep, over here.
All right. Hey, thanks for the very enlightening talk. My question is, and it's not really a question to you, but more to the big tech companies. But you've heard what they say, right? So we're a publisher on history, and one of the things that we know for a fact about history, but that's true for many other knowledge dimensions as well, is that there are many facts that are widely represented on the internet, but they're not true. They're just things people believe, but that's not actually what's true, right? And you have the same for medicine, you have the same for many things. Now, what's sort of the AI's company's plan for this? Because if everybody turns to ChatGPT or any of the others, they will just regurgitate what the majority of the internet says, which may not be true. And if publishers are no longer publishing because AI gives all the answers, doesn't that just create a self-replicating spiral down to I don't know where?
Can I just interject that like the first time I heard some of the AI just grabbed everything from the internet, I'm like, has it been to the internet before? Like, what a shitty source. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think that, so first of all, we're just 2 years into this generative AI moment. ChatGPT came out in November 2022. Didn't really hit 100 million users until January or February 2023. So 2 years. there's going to be a lot of time and a lot of effort into making sure that these bots get the facts right. And the way that this happens is, I think it's a lot of folks, I'm sure this is not the case, I'm sure you understand it, but just for the room, there's a belief in the public that these bots just ingest the internet and spit it out. But actually, the real magic of it is that after the model is built, there's a fine-tuning process where trainers will have sample conversations with the bots and then upload them. And then the bot will continue to try to emulate those type of conversations after they're fine-tuned. So right now, ChatGPT may be spitting out inaccurate history facts. In fact, I'm sure it is. But we are seeing the hallucination rate come down. GPT 4.5 has the lowest hallucination rate of OpenAI's models, even better than the reasoning models. And we're seeing fine-tuning get better. So it's going to be impossible for Silicon Valley to get every fact into these models. But companies like Scale AI and companies like Cohere are hiring PhDs in all different types of subject matter who are doing this post-training to the models and teaching them not only specific facts, so they're not hard-coding it in, they're giving it a method of thinking afterwards. I'm sorry if this is repetitive, but I do think, I'm just being honest, like I do think that there is a understanding within these companies that they have to get it right. That every time Google tells you to, sorry, I know Google's in the room, but they tell you to eat glue, that's a problem. Sorry, but they did. And
I did. And
and look what happened.
Right.
But they're going to try to train that out. And it's not, by the way, it's not going to be perfect. So, as long as it's not perfect, and it may never get there, there's a moat that you're going to have. I mean, deep research, for instance, as long as deep research, which produces these large research report, hallucinates, you're going to have somebody having to fact check 70 pages that it just spit out, and that's inefficient. But I do think that they are going to get there.
Yeah. Do you have a question over here? Who's next?
On my way, Jake. On my way.
Gabe's with Yahoo. Just so you're right. Case's question's very Yahoo-ish. Go, Gabe.
All right, some levity. So do you think that, these are great, the mortgage calculator sounds really cool. Do you anticipate one day that the powers that be will ask these, supercomputers to come up with the meaning of life? And will the answer be 42?
So yes and yes. I think that these models are already producing unbelievably cogent thoughts about the human condition. I mean, somebody that was testing DeepSeek was like, give me an insight about the human condition that is novel. And then they tweeted like the whole chain of thought, because DeepSeek will actually show you the chain of thought. And obviously DeepSeek has like read Sapiens and every other book about the state of the human condition, and it's now synthesizing it in a way that's accessible to a general audience. And I think it's like pretty incredible to watch. And again, going back to this Andre Karpathy video, which I really recommend highly, he talks about how every little token that the model outputs is basically a computation run through the transformer. So we're getting to the point where these models are really able to think a lot and compute a lot with these long chains of thought. So they're actually just able to do like somewhat sophisticated calculations as they're spitting out text, and they're really good at it. So, I mean, just to sort of build on that, I was speaking with the CEO of Replica. Folks know Replica? It's a app where you can build an AI companion, and a lot of people fall in love with these companions. It gets better. Regularly, I mean, I don't know how regularly, but more than once, people have invited her to the wedding between them and their companion. And the way that these models are going to understand us, and I know I'm anthropomorphizing, but I don't care. I'm going to use it. Like the way that they're going to understand us and relate to us and remember us and understand about us individually and us as a species, is going to be crazy. And I don't tend to overhype this stuff. Like, I tend to look at it with a skeptical eye. But I'll just say I ran it by Demis Hassabis, the head of Google DeepMind, and he goes, yeah, like one of the big risks that we have here is that people are going to build these deep relationships with these AIs, and we don't know where that's going to go. So your question about understanding like the condition of humanity, they're already doing a pretty good job of it.
And if you didn't laugh at Gabe's joke, then go and search what is the big deal about 42, okay? Because it's, you should make that reference. It's a good one.
Thank you for the talk. This is really fascinating. Could you talk a little about content provenance, establishing, certifying content provenance from a human versus AI initiatives like C2PA, to what extent that's important or is being adopted or will be?
I have to be honest, I don't know much about it. So maybe we can talk later. But I think that my educated guess is that the user isn't going to care very much, so it will matter in a legal context. People, I mean, remember, we're coming from a society that is happy to spread stories on Facebook just as long as they align with their value system. So, I mean, we're coming from Pizzagate society. So I think that, unfortunately, it's the case. So I think that, like, and we're not all Pizzagate, but it happened in this society. And I think there's going to be a group of people that are going to be concerned about where the content came from, not a high percentage. And I think these companies most likely will find a way to get around that just by linking. I know it's not a great answer, but that's sort of my uninformed take on it.
I think we're pretty much up on time, so I really want to appreciate
Thank you,
stuff like
everybody.
that.
Thank you.
All right. Stick around for as long as you can. I think people will have some stuff like that.